everybody! Rick with Let's Level Up, and I wanted to do something a bit different for this video. What I wanted to do is actually record our first list video. You know what I'm talking about. Top 5 cooperative games, top 5 games to play with someone you don't like, that kind of thing. And to really get things started, since we are approaching Christmas at the time of filming this video, I thought it would be great to have a top 5 games you should own if you don't already. Now, this is going to be over no certain genre or just made in a certain year. These are just general statements of games. If you don't own them, you should, in my opinion. I hope you guys like what you see. Join us at the table and we'll show you number 5. Alright guys, number 5 on our list of games that you should own if you don't already is actually one of my personal favorites. This is Betrayal at House on the Hill. This game is a ton of fun. It's a 2-act game, and it was recently actually featured on Tabletop, Will Wheaton's show on the Geek and Sundry channel. You probably already heard of it. If you haven't, you gotta watch it. Great production value. It's probably my favorite show Geek and Sundry has done. It's second place goes to Spellslingers. I really like the emphasis on actually playing the games, and great job, Felicia, Will, all those guys. So, first act of this game, we actually take the role of one of 12 different, and this is actually, they're double-sided here, so there's really 6 different investigators. Anything from a small child to an old priest are present here. A lot of different horror movie archetypes are present. That really makes this game a lot of fun. Essentially, we're exploring this old mansion, and we're going to be exploring this mansion on our turn by going into a room that we haven't already seen and essentially pulling the top appropriate tile off the room. So you notice that there are going to be 3 different levels on these tiles for the upper level, the ground floor, and the basement. So depending on where I'm exploring, for instance the ground floor, if this matches, I can actually move into a room that I haven't already explored and it'd be there. So there's a whole lot of different ways that this game works. And again, plays in 2 acts. First act, we're just general exploring. It's essentially us collecting power, trying to get items, trying to enhance our abilities of might, speed, sanity, and knowledge. And trying not to die, because there are a lot of dangers in each of these rooms. The game essentially gives you dice rolls that you do in order to pass challenges. And these challenges can be from anything. If you're a fan of very thematic games, Betrayal at House on the Hill is one of the best. It's straight out of a Lovecraftian novel, almost. There are 3 types of cards in this game. Event cards, which are represented by this little conch here, and you'll draw a card depending on if the room has the appropriate symbol. So for instance, the graveyard here has an event on it. The graveyard also has some additional text on it that you'll also have to pass. So when this happens, you essentially flip over the top deck and read aloud. This card is Spider. It says, a spider the size of a fist lands on your shoulder and crawls into your hair. You must attempt a speed roll to brush it away or a sanity roll to stand still. So essentially, I'm going to get dice equal to whatever my value is on either one of those attributes depending on what I want to roll. So if I'm playing Flash Williams, who has a very high speed score, I would take 6 dice, because that's what his score is, and I'd roll them. Add the pips up, I have a score of 7, and it says on a 4 or higher, it's gone. I gain 1 in the trait I used to attempt the roll. If I were to fail this with a 0, it says it takes a chunk out of you, and you take 2 points of physical damage. And in that case, I'd actually take a point away from one or both of my physical traits, which are might and speed, in order to take that damage in. I say this is a 2-act game. The first act is pretty simple, and there's not actually a lot to it in the grand scheme of things. It's in the second act that this game actually becomes very good. The second types of cards here are omen cards, and these are represented by a raven. Anytime somebody draws an omen card, you actually make a haunt roll. You take 6 of the dice and you roll them. Now, if my roll is under the total amount of omen cards that are on the table, the haunt begins. And depending on the omen and the room that you're in, one of 50 different scenarios can happen. I've actually played this game a lot, and I have yet to find a repeat scenario, and there's still quite a few scenarios I haven't gotten. Probably just luck. You could get the same scenario back to back. It's possible. Not probable, but possible. Even still, this game offers a whole lot of fun. What really makes this game unique, though, is in the haunt itself. The 50 scenarios come with two different tones, one for the traitor and one for the survivors. Now, each of these has their own win objectives. That's right, I said traitor. One of the group is going to no longer be part of the group and instead reveal their nefarious nature and essentially why they lured you out into this evil place to begin with. This game is, again, one of my favorites. If you don't already have it, I think you should. It's Betrayal at House on Hill, and you should definitely take a look. Number 4 on our list of games that you should own if you don't already is going to be one of my personal favorites from the AEG line, Smash Up. I'm going to actually include and talk about the 2 expansions to this game as well, Awesome Level 9000 and the obligatory Cthulhu set. In Smash Up, I'm going to take 2 archetypal, what's the right word? Geek, maybe? 2 geek archetypes such as pirates and ninjas, and put them together and make one deck. Cards are simple in this game. This is a card-based game, as you can see. There are 2 types of cards. There are minions, and then there are actions. I can play one of each on my turn. The objective of this game is to actually do combat to these bases. So we're not actually doing a direct physical player-to-player combat. However, we're all vying for these victory points that you get whenever a base is smashed. And a base is smashed is when the total number of minion strength from all players breaks equal to or over whatever the value of the card in the top left corner. And then we get points depending on our position of minion strength. So first place, in this case, would get 3 points. Second place would get 3 points. And then if there's a third runner-up, they would get 2 points. We play to 15. This game is a lot of fun. With every expansion, it gets better and better, in my opinion. There's a whole lot of different things that you can do and different combinations of factions that actually keep this game hitting our table time and time again. I'm actually interested, if you've played Smash Up before, what are some of your favorite combinations? Let us know in the comments below. Some of the different things that I like to do, I like to involve zombies quite a bit, and the zombie deck is actually still here in the box, but here it is. The zombie deck actually employs a lot of different bringing things back from my discard pile. And that's one of the reasons why I really love what AEG has done with this game. It has got theme just spewing out of it. Each faction of 20 cards has its own set mechanics and its own play style and interacts with the other sets in its own way. And that keeps us thinking of different combinations of factions I can put together in order to make a really good try. Now, this game's actually going to start out, you're going to lay 8 factions, randomly or otherwise, out on the table, and then each player will take their turn picking a faction. And it goes around the table like a snake. So it'll go around once into the last player, and then it'll start again at the last player, and then go back around. Essentially the last player is going to pick their deck all at once, whereas every other player is going to have to at least wait 1 turn in order to find theirs. So if you're going first, you're going to get the first faction and the last faction picked, if that makes sense. So somebody may snag up my favorite faction of zombies from me before I get the chance to. So what do? Do I pair my pirates now with bears, plants? Do I do one from the Cthulhu set, like the Minions to Cthulhu or the Miskatonic University? Well, let's see what's out on the table. I mean, that's what really keeps this game so fresh, is I may go into it with the idea of, I want ninjas and zombies, or I want robots and aliens, something of that set. And I may not get it, so what am I going to do in order to keep this game rolling? And how am I going to be able to maximize my smashing I can do within this game? I have a lot of fun with this game. It doesn't take itself too seriously. The core set runs about $20, probably $25, and each of the expansions is in the teens somewhere, probably $15 to $20. Very, very good game. One I definitely think you guys should check out if you haven't already. Alright, the third game on our list of games that you should own if you don't already is going to be the Game of Thrones The Board Game 2nd Edition. And this is published by Fantasy Flight Games, and it is essentially a conquest game, much like Risk, if you've heard of that. However, it's, again, loaded with theme. It's set within the Westerosi world, and it's right at the time of the Clash of Kings, right? So Robert Baratheon has just died, and all the different houses are kind of jockeying for position. Now, the overall objective in this game is to be the first player to control at the same time 7 different keeps and castles. And you can see around the board, a castle will be 2 layers, and a keep will be 1 layer. So if I can be the man that, or the ruler, however, that rules 7 keeps at one time, game is over. It could be on turn 4, it could be on turn 10, who knows. There's going to be 10 rounds to this game, so at the end of the game, if a player hasn't controlled 7, the player with the most keeps or castles at the end of the game wins. This game is very interesting, and one of my favorite mechanics in this game is actually having to do with the political element to Game of Thrones, and I think they nailed that very nicely. Just to explain some things, there's a supply track here in the middle, and this actually designates, depending on how many barrels of supply that I own at the time that we resupply, and that's one of the mechanics built into these 3 sets of cards. I can adjust my army sizes, and an army is constituted anytime I have 2 units in the same space. So if I have a unit here and a unit there, and none of my units are sharing a space, I technically have 0 armies. I just have single units all over the place. That being said, if my opponents have those armies, it can make things pretty difficult for us to win. So you're going to want to try to get supply, again, with our main goal being on collecting the castles and the keeps. Again, that's the overall goal. However, the supply is a great way to do that. There are also 3 different tracks which will periodically be bidding on with our influence. The first track is the Iron Throne, and you'll get this token here. Now the Iron Throne, or whoever wields this token, has a lot of power. They actually get to break ties and conflicts. So he who has the Iron Throne actually gets to decide who wins and loses between things. And this can be anything from bidding on a track, to whoever the lowest player was whenever the wildlings attack, to an actual combat. So something that's factory. I'm sorry, that's not correct. The fiefdoms determines the combat. But the Iron Throne will determine any other ties in the game. The next track is going to be the fiefdoms track. Now the fiefdoms track is actually going to determine your power within your military conquest, and you actually get a Valyrian steel blade when you get that. Then the Valyrian steel blade has a one-shot ability that once per round you can add 1 to a combat. It also will determine who wins and loses depending on their position. So a person in position 1 will always beat on a tie positions 2 through 6, so on and so forth. This game is going to play 3 to 6 players as well, so it's important to know those. Finally, the last track is going to be the King's Court. Now the King's Court track is important because whoever has that gets the Messenger Raven. And the Messenger Raven can actually use this once per round, that after our orders have been issued, they can actually flip this and reissue an order on the table. They can also flip this to look at the top card of the Wildlings deck, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. One last thing with the King's Court track, there are 4 positions with stars on them. Those stars represent special order icons, and our order icons are actually going to be little dots. Let me get one out really quick. They're actually going to be an icon like this. So it's actually a double-sided icon with your house sigil, in this case House Greyjoy, and then whatever the action is. Now, in between turns and at the beginning of the game before we start the round, we're going to set an order on every square or every area which we have a unit on. That's important to know, because I can actually put a period of influence or a piece of influence down on the token and still own the land, but I wouldn't be able to issue an order there unless I have a unit. And units can be anything from footmen to knights to ships to siege engines. I think those are the 4 types of units in this game. and they all basically have a numeric value. For instance, the footman has a value of 1, the ship's a value of 1 but can traverse sea, the knights have a value of 2, and then the siege engines have a value of 4 when attacking a city. So after everybody has placed all their orders, we'll essentially reveal these one at a time. And the different orders are as follows. There's a march order, which you're actually going to be using to actually move your units into. And that's actually when combat ensues. When one army or unit moves into a position where another unit is, battle happens. And at that point, each player will flip over one of their house cards that they're choosing, and then will total their total power value. Whoever has the highest there wins. And depending on, and either they will rout troops or actually destroy them outright, depending on what card is played. So there's a lot of power there. The next thing is going to be support. Support actually is the gauntlet icon, and you guys probably can't see this, but it looks like a fist and a gauntlet clinched up, and that actually allows me to support a neighboring position here with my guys. And this is interesting because I can actually support one of my enemies, but I can only support one side of the combat. So much like Westerosi lords would do, I could tell player A that I'm going to support them in this combat, but really I may have struck a deal with player B, you for this instance, and maybe have arranged a land swap or something like that in order for the backstab to happen. And that's where this game really shines. It takes what we love about Game of Thrones and A Song of Fire and Ice and embodies it in the gameplay. And this game is actually one of these games that you're going to play. When we play, we generally we dedicate the evening to it. We'll go out, we'll have dinner, we'll start the game then basically. We'll draw random houses, and there'll be 6 of us. We'll have dinner, and over dinner we'll actually be plotting and finding out. And generally we'll go into a game knowing that, hey, I'm going to ally with you, so let's try to get this done. And then as soon as I find out that I'm House Lannister and they are House Greyjoy, our alliance is broken. Right out of the gate, because we're so close in neighbors. And there's generally a gentleman's agreement in said alliances. Okay, you don't go across the river here. And then whenever units start encroaching on your territory, that's when you really start to rethink things. Or you take the initiative and you do that first. So there's a lot of backstabbing, a lot of trading going on. You're going to be getting influence tokens, which are represented by these little guys here. They look like a little house sigil with a crown on them. These are basically the currency of the game. We'll use these to bid on the influence tracks throughout the game, but also we'll use these to stop the wildlings from attacking. Now there's going to be a wildlings deck in this game, and this wildlings deck it's got different scenarios here. An example here, it says, on a wildling victory, the lowest bidder replaces all his knights with footmen. Any knight unable to be replaced is destroyed. And it says everyone else replaces 2 of their knights, so it's called crow killers. And the highest bidder in a Night's Watch victory may immediately replace up to 2 of their footmen anywhere with available knights. So periodically throughout the game, wildlings are going to attack, and there's going to be a track here. As soon as it hits 12, they attack. There's also certain cards that can instantly trigger a wildlings attack, so you want to be careful for those. At that time, all the players will pool together their influence. And just like bidding, they'll take their influence they want to bid, they'll put it in their hand, and all at the same time will reveal. And depending on the total number of influence that you bid is your position on there. If you bid 8, and you're the highest, and then nobody else bid 8, you're the highest bidder. If you bid 0, you're the lowest bidder. And again, that comes back to where the Iron Thrones can be able to break ties in that. So a lot of different elements in this game. At first, when you look at it and you haven't actually played it, you can confuse this for just another Risk clone, and it's not that. This game has far more going on than meets the eye, and it's definitely one you should be considered picking up. Okay, everybody, on to our second spot here on the games that you should own if you don't already. And I think for most people, you're not going to actually own this one already. This is a brand new game, and I say brand new, it literally this week just shipped to distributors, so chances are it's not even on their shelves yet. That being said, it should be available next week as of filming this video. This is Dead Panic. It's from Fireside Games, and you probably know Fireside Games for their smash hit Castle Panic. Dead Panic is a sort of spiritual successor to that. Right away, let me just address something. I've seen a lot of comments and whatnot on the different forums like Board Game Geek saying that Dead Panic is really just Castle Panic with zombie stickers over it. And that couldn't be further from the truth. There are big gameplay mechanic differences here that really make this game stand alone as its own experience, and I feel a better one. First and foremost, victory condition is quite a bit different. In Castle Panic, we win if we can clear the bag of minions. In this game, it's not the case. The dead will keep rising even after this bag is cleared. Our victory condition in this game is when we get 3 survivors to make it to the cabin, and each of the survivors will drop a piece of this radio. We have to pick this radio piece up by piece by piece, assemble it, and then once it's assembled, use it to call for help. And that is represented by a van that'll come in. Then each player will need to move out of the cabin into the van in order to survive. All this while the zombie apocalypse is literally blowing up in our face. This game is going to be, again, another big thing here is we're actually physical pieces in this world now, rather than just some overall figure that's issuing orders to creatures. We have 2 actions that we can do on our turn, such as move from room to room in the cabin. We can repair walls. We can even search the cabin for things like this crossbow, and then attempt to essentially use them or attack zombies as they're coming in. There are a few different types of zombies that we have to be worried about, and I'll just draw a few from the bag here, and hopefully we get all different types. Let's see. Okay, first we're going to talk about is the Brute. The Brute is the biggest and baddest of all the zombies. It has 3 health points. And when a Brute actually is going to move 1 space at a time, and when it gets to a wall in the cabin, it's going to obliterate that wall in 1 shot. It takes every other zombie's 2 shots, and in between those shots will essentially put a cracked token on the wall if it's in trouble. And that lets the players know that, hey, 1 more shot from a zombie and this wall is done. We're going to have to repair it right away. The Brute, however, will just obliterate the wall, and also has 3 health. So that means it's going to be quite difficult to actually take 1 down. Next up, we're going to have the Brawler. Now the Brawler is actually the most difficult creature to take down in melee combat. All the other creatures in this game, or zombies rather, you take down with a die roll of 7 or higher. Brawlers have 2 health, and you have to get an 8 or higher to beat it. And I'm sorry, and it wins on ties, so you'll have to get a 9 or higher on the dice to beat it. And when you're only rolling 2, that's a difficult task. Next up, we're going to have the Sprinter. The Sprinter is another special zombie type, and its special ability, again having 2 life, it's going to move 2 spaces or 2 rings at a time, making it get to the walls a lot faster than the other zombies. After the Sprinter, we're going to have the Shambler. Now the Shambler is our basic zombie type. It's going to have a fight value of 7, and it only has 1 health, and it only moves 1 square at a time. So I think these are the most in total within the bag, so they're the most common type. Lastly, of the zombie types are going to be the Creepers. And the Creeper represents just a torso that's kind of crawling its way towards the cabin. Now the Creeper is special because it only moves on a roll of 4 or higher. So whenever it's time to move the zombies during that phase, you roll 1d6 for all Creepers. If the roll is 4 or higher, all Creepers will move up 1 space. If not, they'll stay in the position that they are. However, once they get to a wall, they can actually pass through a wall without having to knock it down. So they do have that special ability. The other piece that's going to be in the bag is going to be a Survivor. You have to keep these guys alive. There are only 3 in the bag, so that means if 1 dies, you have to wait till you shuffle all the discarded pieces back into the bag, which makes things very complicated for you to get victory. The Survivor's going to have 3 health, and it's going to move 1 square at a time, 1 ring at a time. Once it gets to a wall in the cabin, it'll bypass the cabin wall, just like a creeper, get inside, drop its radio piece. Once you have 3 radio pieces, you assemble it, and then you call for help, and then you win the game. If the survivor dies, it actually becomes a zombie survivor, and you have to take it out. That being said, each of our heroes here have their own special ability. They all have 3 injuries that they can take. Once they have taken 3 injuries by a zombie, they're actually going to become a zombie character. And this is actually going to be a player-controlled zombie that will actually have 2 different ability points that it can assign, and they'll have their own piece as well. So from even when you die in this game, it's not over. It's now your job to take everybody else out to make sure that everybody loses. So that adds a very fun element to this game. While we're talking about survivors, each character has its own kind of flavor and its own special ability. Such as Al the construction worker here. His special ability is that as a free action, he can repair a crack in the wall. Ray the medic can actually spend his turns healing people, and David is a personal trainer, and he can use his abilities to essentially win ties in combat. And there are many other types of characters in this game. Essentially, all of these different characters got stranded out in the woods in the middle of the zombie outbreak. Everybody saw the lights of the cabin and decided to rush there. So we assembled a very motley crew of survivors. Again, the problem is that they're not the only ones who saw the lights, and the zombie horde is coming and coming and coming. So this game is quite a bit different than Castle Panic. It is, in its essence, it's a cooperative game. And then once the van comes, you can play your type of game to make sure your character gets there. It's a very fun game, and again, it's brand new and should be on store shelves soon. So if you want to pick up Dead Panic, definitely look at your local game store, see if they've got it. I think this is one that everybody must have if they don't already. Alright, time for number 1, the piece de la resistance, so to speak. It comes from Arcane Wonders, and it's a game called Mage Wars. Now, a Mage Wars is a dueling mages game where 2 or more wizards are actually going to fight to the death. This game is going to be, I don't know, when I first got into it, I called it Magic the Gathering, the board game, but that's not fair to this game, and for a few reasons. First and foremost, our wizard, so to speak, is going to be represented by an actual card. All the wizards are going to be a certain archetype, such as a Beastmaster, or a Priestess, or a Warlord, or a Force Master, or a Warlock. And they all have different schools of magic in which they've trained. They're all also going to have a spell tome. Now these spell tomes are going to be full of actual spells which we can use in order to combat our adversary. And these are things like incantations or actually attack spells to summoning creatures or conjuring up walls or different things that are going to help us out. Maybe even equipment and things like that. More on the spell book later. Our actual character is going to move around this battle mat in these different zones as we see fit. Now on our turn we can do one of 2 actions. We get rather 2 actions. We have an action marker on every creature that we have, and when they act, we're going to flip our action marker over, signifying that they have done. We also are going to have a quick cast action marker for our main wizard, and this can be used before or after an attack has been done, or at the beginning and end of the attack or the main phase. All of our damage is going to be done by rolling dice. And these are essentially D2s. There are 2 sides that are blank. There are a side with 1, and then a 1 with a starburst, and then a 2, and then a 2 with a starburst. The starburst signifying a critical hit that ignores any armor, and then the other numbers being just normal damage, which we would add, or rather subtract armor values from. So if I were to do an attack and roll 4 dice, I would essentially have 1 critical and 2 normal damage. Now if that was a creature that didn't have any armor, I would deal 3 damage to it. If it was a creature that had, let's say, 2 armor, I would only deal 1 because that's the only one that I rolled a starburst for. The game also comes with a D12. This is called the status die. We also roll initiative with this guy. the game, rather certain attacks, and again it's built kind of on theme. Fire attacks will have a chance, for instance, to deal a thing called burn, which essentially set the target ablaze and they'll take damage over time. Other types of attacks, like lightning attacks, will have a chance to stun or daze. There are also certain creatures who have poison attacks and things like that. The point is, you roll this die on the event of doing one of those abilities, and depending on what you get, depends on the action actually occurs. So if I end up rolling high enough, I can actually give something a burn or daze them, so on and so forth. There is a lot of different variety. The core set actually comes with 4 different mages, and that's the Warlock, the Beastmaster, the Priestess, and finally the oh goodness, it slipped, the Wizard. Slipped my mind for a second. I've actually bought the first expansion pack along with that, which is the Force Master versus the Warlord, which adds those 2 mages to it. I've also gone through and I've bought a couple additional spell tomes, and what I've done is essentially created each wizard of the 6 wizards their own tome, so we can play multiplayer. There are also additional multiplayer tokens which I've purchased that come in a green and a yellow color, so we can play multiplayer. You can either play 2-on-2 or free-for-all, or if you have a very experienced player that wants to try a 1-on-3, I guess you could try that. Okay, so this game is going to differ from Magic in a lot of ways, so it's not a fair comparison to directly compare the two. But when you first think of a dueling wizards game, it's hard not to think of Magic the Gathering, and I get it. However, the spell tome, just the mechanic of this alone, separates it from any other mage game I've ever played. Now, during the phase before the action phase, which is called the ready stage, we're actually going to be doing a number of different things. One of those is planning. And during that phase, I actually pick 2 spells, any spells I want from my book, and ready them like so. I put them face down in front of me. So let's say I want to try to summon a creature, and just in case something gets crazy, I want to also be able to get this Conjuration of Tanglevine. So I ready those 2. After I've readied my spells, I let the rest of the table know that I am ready. After they're done, we'll move on to the next phase of the ready stage. So that right there, this key mechanic really separates this game and makes it stand out, and really offers us so many different avenues for strategy. I'm not having to wait for a pull from the top of my deck. I am readying 2 spells every turn, and from a player like myself, who's constantly let's go, let's go, let's go, as far as playing cards, I generally tend to outplay my hand before I've really gotten grasp, so a lot of my losses come from me just playing too aggressively. Mage Wars is a perfect fit for me in that aspect. I'm always pulling 2 spells out, just 2, and then I can summon them and do whatever I want on my turn. I don't have to play them on my turn. I can use my action just to move my mage and not play any of them. So there's also that. I could ready 2 spells, not use them at all. There are a ton of spells that come in the core set. Plenty for each of the 4 mages. And then again, with the spells already divvied up, I've got this many left over of varying types from just the core set and the first expansion. This is a lot of cards. I mean, this is a ton of different things that I can do throughout the game. And you can also customize your spell decks. So I can, what I've basically got set up is the general, hey, if this is the first time you've been playing this game, you want to branch out with these other mages, here are these pre-constructed decks. That's what I've done with these. And I've been having a blast with them. I've still yet to really take that next step of really customizing things. I know there's a ton I want to do with the Warlock, because I always seem to lose with the Warlock, but I've got a lot of cool dark spells I want to try to substitute. Essentially, every spell is going to have a spell level and a type of school that it comes from. And I can bring this book together up to 120 points, depending on the actual character I'm playing. It's one of their stats. And actually build a custom book. If I ever to go outside of the schools of magic that I know with that particular wizard, I essentially double the spell level. If it's a spell that directly contradicts with my wizard, such as the Warlock. If I try to put a holy spell in their tome, it would be 3 times the level of the spell. So it's actually very interesting and offers a lot of room for customization. Again, I can't say enough good things about Mage Wars. This grid and this battle mat here is very large, but it's actually going to fill up very fast. There are 12 essential grids here that I move in between, and just with 2 players, you'll have characters spread out all throughout the thing. You'll have walls of fire, which are going to cut off pieces of the arena, and you'll have different other creatures and other spells that allow you to really take great control over this play space. Spells like teleport or traps that allow you to lure people into you really are fun. Overall, if you don't have Mage Wars, I very strongly recommend it. We're going to be doing some live play sessions later this year with Mage Wars, and I definitely think it's going to be a lot of fun for you guys to watch. Again, if you're a fan of Mage Wars or any of the other games that we've mentioned, I would definitely love to hear about it. Just comment in this video. Whew, I'm exhausted just thinking about how awesome those games are. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. As always, you can reach us at letslevelup.net. All of our social networking sites are there. If you did think we missed something, or you have a suggestion on a future list video, please comment at this video, drop us a like, or a comment on Twitter or Facebook or something like that. And as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe. It means the world to us. So thank you so much. Also, check out the Let's Level Up podcast that is available on iTunes and Stitcher Smart Radio. Thank you again, and game on.